Okay, after we've seen all this data and we've looked at it, put on our imaginary data nerd hats and analyzed all this data, it was time to summarize it. So we would talk about what really went well, what strategies worked well for us, what did the kids enjoy, and looked at what things could we possibly do to improve. So it was really a time of sharing, a time of talking about strategies, talking about what really sparked interest or sparked motivation for the kids. The little things that you've heard about, some of those stories about the students who have achieved a lot. We're so proud of themselves and we're so proud of them. It was really fun to go back and talk about that and to kind of summarize everything and to say that a certain class had such great gains or a certain student had these great gains. It was just a really fun time to celebrate and to really acknowledge the achievements. It got a little crazy sometimes, you know. Fourth would get up on the table and dance. Panchyshyn would bring in some donuts, and once in a while, if we were really lucky, Brent would bring in a pan of brownies. So that was really fun, the time to look back and talk about what went well, what can we possibly repeat, or what can we do to improve for next time. And then, just briefly, from my perspective coming in, not as a fourth grade teacher, but as a teacher of science and STEM, I get to see all the classes. And it was a really great experience for me to be able to see the individual students' data because I can build rapport with them in the classroom. I can see what they know and learn in science, but to see what they do outside of science is very helpful. I feel like I get to know more about the student, that learn things that I can do to help a certain person, or maybe if there's a particular lesson that the team is working on in math that I can tie into science to make it a cross-curricular connection. Was great for me. So it's been an awesome experience. It's very motivating for me to see this team so close and so tight and working so hard for the common goal of student learning.
One last thing I wanted to mention about the agenda. When I was first presented with this model, I thought, holy cow, I have to do a new agenda for every meeting. Are you kidding? Well, then it was discovered that it can be ongoing. And so if I scroll at the very top, you can see that this agenda is ongoing. We add to it each time. And what has worked for us with just the math piece is it's more so by unit. And I know Carrie has mentioned that that was nice to see. And that way she knows that all of this is algebra. So next year, we don't need to reinvent our assessments, and we can go back to this and see exactly what we did. We can see what worked and what didn't work. So that's kind of my advice as a facilitator for those of you that are in that role, if you're not doing it already. So then the next question is, so where do we go from here? Moving from being the admirers to the solvers. And so now our shift has focused from the data to the teaching strategies, and that's really where we needed to get. And so we're continuing with that. Asking ourselves for 3, 4, 5, how can we use the OVA and MCA data in the future? Instead of just taking the test, having a score, what can we do with it? And I had the opportunity to go to the math conference in Duluth last weekend, and it was great. We walked away with so many great resources on how to use that data, and we are looking forward to sharing that with you. We figured maybe it wasn't the right timing to give that to you now, since we're in the midst of testing season. So looking at that in the future, and then for K-1-2, what data can be better utilized? I know you don't have that standardized, like the OPAs, but what could you have? We know you have data, but how can we use that? We're going to open this up, and this is probably the most part we're nervous for. Questions, answers, and then suggestions. Let me read you our disclaimer. We will attempt to answer your questions to the best of our ability, with the understanding that we are still learning this process. I just want to open it up, give you time. Hopefully some things have sunk in.
Yes. So when do you find the time to do all the collaborating?
Our PLC is all focused on our data. We use our PLC time from 7:20 to 8:05, sometimes 8:10. And everything that we talked about, writing assessments, coming up with those enrichment activities, that's all PLC-able, and it doesn't need to be done outside of PLC, but it can, and that's where we have, we've used and we've lucked out because we have our common prep. I think we're together all the time anyway, morning and during our prep, so we're always finding that time to connect, and we divide and conquer. So a lot of it...
Dividing and conquering is really how we get things done. Okay, you guys go here, but we trust that what they're doing is helpful to everybody. When we go make copies, we make copies for everybody in the enrichment. When we make copies for the on level, it's everything. We share everything. And that's something that's really been calming in this whirlwind of an adventure this year. So it's been challenging, but it's been comforting knowing that we are all in the same boat, but we all understand each other and know that we can trust they're looking at our standards just the way that we would, and they're looking in everyday math. They're looking in all of our resources that we all have and share. And so figuring out, we also got this beautiful jump drive from Dale Yoakum. If you ever need it, it's perfect. It's got all of our lessons organized in different file folders for the smartboard for everyday math, and so we can use that for the enrichment. And it's just that's been quick, and it's a go-to for the time management thing. But it started out rocky. It started out like we had to figure out how to manage our time, but then once we got it, hey, you guys go plan reading, you guys go plan math, we'll put them together, and here you go. Like it's quick and painless now. It was.
So we decided at the beginning of the year that every Wednesday was designated, and we were fortunate because we all have prep together, and that doesn't happen across every grade level. Every Wednesday prep was planned for the next week. So because many of us felt like we felt better if we had everything organized and we were less stressed out if we were early enough in the week planned for the next. So every Wednesday our entire prep was planned. We started out by trying to do math and reading all together. That ended up taking a prep and a half, so it would be Wednesday into Thursday. And then after we started kind of going with all of this, we would take, 3 of us would go do math, 3 of us would do reading, and then we trusted one another, like Tara said, and when it came to copying and all that sort of stuff, we did it for everybody. Nobody was ever on their own to do one thing for themselves. We all just pitched in and did it for everybody, and we just kind of rotated. And with coaches and stuff too, we had a lot of people who had to be gone, so we would just take turns throughout the year. You know, like Tara and I, we had opposite seasons that we coached, so I would cover her during her coaching seasons, and she'd cover me during mine, and you just realize that you pick up more weight during those opposite seasons.
With the entering of data, you know, you might ask, well, are you entering data during your PLC, or are you doing that outside of PLC? And for me, it made sense to enter it outside of PLC because our PLC minutes are so precious that I would, again, this is my thought, hate to lose that time punching in numbers. Let's see what those numbers mean instead of putting them in. And so thankfully my group was willing to do that outside of PLC time. Does that answer your question? Any others?
Can I say something, Cassie?
Absolutely.
Like on that same thing with planning, there are a fair amount of PLCs that are spent where it's like you guys are on level, you're enrichment, you are reteach, and then one of the specialists will join each one of those, which is helpful. And especially, I mean, a lot of the the below level students are my students. So it's helpful to be asked on that and be able to help.
Laura, did you have a question?
Just a comment, but the nice thing about using your lesson plans together is that then they would email those lesson plans to us. So I always knew what third grade students.
For those of you that didn't hear, because we have the common lesson plan, then we can just shoot it off in an email to our specials so they know what content we are covering and which standards we're covering for that week. Ideally, we would send it the week ahead, Thursday or Friday, but sometimes it was Monday morning. Other comments, questions? Anything that you're...
Your lesson plan, then, is that the
If you don't know me, I'm very self-diagnosed OCD, and I like things type A, okay? So I started that on my own and then talked to the team, and yep, we want to be a part of that. And so that was just on Microsoft Word, and then we uploaded it to Google Docs. You could certainly make it into a Google Doc, and that way the formatting wouldn't change. As you saw, all the standards were along the line. So that's something that we could do in the future.
With your reading plans, how are you share enough of the common books and everything that when you were teaching to be able to have the same lesson plan?
For reading, we have one textbook per pair of students. We were using Houghton, Houghton, Mifflin. Anything from the PLCs that have used this model that maybe you have other suggestions or insight? There's a lot of you out there. Nick?
Amber and Boyer created a template for our lesson plans on Google Docs, so every week she goes in, here's it out in this week for our of math and this. So she has a template.
So because sharing is caring, she might be able to share with us. Thanks, Amber. Anybody else? I'm seeing faces like, holy cow, I'm overwhelmed. I'm seeing faces like it's a Friday afternoon, let's wrap it up. What are you feeling? Any other questions? Burning questions about what the process is? Anything you want me to go back to? No.
I think the biggest thing is that we're all willing to. I know that everybody in this room is willing to work hard. We just found something that works well for all of us.
And I think everyone needs to know it's a process.
Yeah.
You know, as you start this, it's not going to look like this right away. When I started, I got a whole bunch of copies of people's that looked just like yours, beautiful, and I was like,
Right, it's overwhelming. Absolutely.
It's look, you know, and so it's a process. Just work with it, play around with it, and eventually, as the data starts coming in, it just gets more comfortable, and it becomes easier as you play around.
But being willing, I think, is that first step. To break the fear. Tom?
Bruce and a couple other people are going to put some templates together. We have been directed by Cheryl to get this for all the units next year's. So there's going to be one, hopefully from each grade level, that's going to come and help us get this together. So when you go to grade levels, you'll have all the math stuff on the PLCs, so that performance assessment, the exit steps, whatever you guys give us to share, you prepare, you have put together a template. So you want these guys have created templates, they've created performance assessments, they've done a ton. Hopefully we're going to have some of that. Hopefully you've got some that to share with us, so we don't have to do this all June, July, and August. Hopefully get it done. So I think the administrators are asking, or I've asked for some people to help if we're looking at one per building per grade level. They would like to be involved. We haven't talked. Myself or me.
That brings up anything from administrators? You want to add, or Todd? Nothing? Nate?
If you guys are done, then
Are we done? Yep. Okay. One more thing. And you are get it. If you are a facilitator, when we are finished here, we're breaking out into groups. And I just wrote down the questions to consider, because this is what we're going to talk about when we go back and we're not in a large group, so we can kind of debrief and process what was just shared.